The twin moons of Arvin Station hung low over the glowing market streets, their pale light washing over the rows of glass shops that lined the district. Inside one of the smaller stores, a quiet human man named Eli worked his usual night shift behind the counter. He had been working there for 3 years, scanning goods and greeting customers who often ignored him. Most of them were aliens, tall, scaled, or covered in shimmering skin, and few had kind eyes for humans. Humans were rare on Arvin Station, seen as poor wanderers, useful only for simple labor. Eli didn't mind, or at least he pretended not to. He liked the stillness between customers, the hum of the cooling units, and the soft sound of the automatic doors sliding open and closed. But that night something caught his attention. Through the glass front he saw a small thin figure entering the store, holding the hand of a child. The woman moved carefully, her long coat brushing the floor. Her skin had a faint silver tone, and the tiny lights that lined her arms shimmered weakly, as if dimmed from hunger. The child beside her was even smaller, maybe 5 years old, with glowing blue eyes and tangled white hair that framed a tired little face. They walked slowly down the aisle, picking up a few items, some nutrient packs, a small container of water, and a piece of bread. Eli watched quietly, not because he was suspicious, but because something about them felt wrong. They looked too fragile, too lost, like they didn't belong in this bright, harsh city of machines and cold hearts. When they reached the counter, the woman placed her items carefully before Eli. Her voice was soft, shaky, and carried a strange accent. "How much for these?" Eli scanned them, and the total blinked on the display. 72 credits. The woman hesitated, opening a small pouch made from worn fabric. She counted glowing credit chips one by one, whispering numbers to herself. Then her finger stopped, and her face fell. She didn't have enough, not even close. The child tugged on her sleeve, asking something in their native tongue. The woman smiled faintly, but her eyes were full of panic. I am sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I cannot pay this much." She began to take the items back, her hands trembling as she tried to return them. Eli felt his chest tighten. He could see the hunger in the child's eyes, the exhaustion in the woman's face. He had seen many things in this place: greedy traders, arrogant nobles, cruel customers. But this felt different. There was quiet dignity in how she tried to hide her shame. Other shoppers in line began to murmur. A heavyset alien behind her snorted, "Figures these drifters always waste our time." Another laughed, "Should have stayed on their dying moon." Eli felt heat rise in his chest, but he stayed calm. He looked at the woman, at the way she tried to smile even as she placed the bread back on the counter. Her voice was almost a whisper. "We will manage, thank you. I will return the food." But before she could finish, Eli reached out, stopping her hand. His voice was gentle but firm. "No, keep it." She blinked, confused. "What?" Eli took out his small pouch and placed a few of his own credits on the counter. He scanned them in and completed the payment. The register beeped softly, and the transaction was done. The room went silent except for the faint hum of the store lights. The woman stared at him, her eyes wide, glowing faintly with alien light. "You pay for me?" she asked slowly, as if she couldn't believe it. Eli nodded. "Yes, for you and your child." "But why?" she whispered. "You are human. You owe me nothing." He smiled softly. "Because no one should go hungry." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The child smiled shyly, clutching the bread against their chest. The woman bowed deeply, her silver hair falling over her shoulders. "You are kind more than I deserve," she said. Eli didn't answer. He just nodded and began to pack their things quietly. As they left, the heavy-set alien behind them muttered something cruel, but Eli ignored him. Through the glass, he watched the woman and her child step out into the moonlight, their silhouettes small against the neon glow. And just before they disappeared into the crowd, Eli noticed something strange on the woman's arm, a faint blue mark, glowing like liquid light, pulsing softly with each heartbeat. He frowned, wondering what it was, but then the door closed, and the night went quiet again. He didn't know that this simple act of kindness would soon draw danger to his door, and that the woman he helped was not who she seemed. The quiet after the woman left stayed with Eli for hours. He could not forget her face, the way her hands trembled when she counted the coins. He kept seeing her child's blue eyes, full of confusion and hunger. Every time the door beeped open for another customer, Eli found himself glancing outside, hoping she was safe. The other workers teased him later, saying he was too soft. They laughed, calling him the kind fool who wasted credits on strangers. But Eli only smiled faintly and kept working. He didn't do it for thanks or praise. He did it because it felt right. Yet deep down, something about that woman stayed in his thoughts. Something about the blue mark glowing on her arm. He had seen many alien species, but none with that symbol. Later that night, after the market lights dimmed and the streets emptied, Eli closed the store. He stepped outside into the cool night air, feeling the faint hum of the spaceport engines far above. The metallic city glowed faintly in shades of silver and blue. He adjusted his jacket and started walking home through the narrow alleys. The colony was quiet at this hour, only the sound of the distant wind and flickering lights from old neon signs. Halfway to his apartment, he noticed movement in the shadows. A faint whisper, a soft sob. He stopped and turned his head, scanning the dark alley beside the recycler bin. At first he thought it was just another beggar, but then he saw her. The same alien woman from earlier, crouched near the wall. Clutching her child close, the child looked asleep, their small face pale and tired. The woman's eyes met his, glowing faintly even in the dark. "Please," she whispered. "I didn't mean to follow, but I had nowhere else to go." Eli walked closer, keeping his voice calm. "Are you all right? You should be home." She shook her head slowly. "No home. No safe place." She tried to stand, but her legs were weak. Eli quickly reached out to help her, steadying her by the shoulders. He felt how cold she was, her skin like ice. He noticed again the strange blue mark on her arm. It pulsed softly, brighter than before. "What is that?" he asked gently. Her eyes widened in fear, and she pulled her sleeve down. "It's nothing," she said quickly. "Please don't just forget." Eli didn't push. He could tell she was afraid, not of him, but of something else, something bigger, something hunting her. He looked around, making sure no one was watching. Then he said quietly, "You and your child need warmth, food, and rest. My place is small, but it's safe." The woman stared at him as if she didn't understand. "You would help again, even now?" Eli nodded. "Yes, come with me." They walked quickly through the narrow alleys, staying close to the walls. When they reached his small apartment, he unlocked the door and led them inside. It was a simple room. One bed, one chair, a small heater in the corner, but it was warm and clean. He handed her a blanket, some water, and half a loaf of bread from his cupboard. The child woke up just enough to eat a small piece before falling asleep again. Eli sat quietly at the table, watching as the woman wrapped her child carefully and whispered soft words in her language. After a few minutes, she looked up and said softly, "Why do you do this? You don't know me." Eli smiled faintly. "Because sometimes we don't need to know someone to do what's right." Her eyes softened, a tear slipping down her cheek. She looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to understand him. "On my world," she said slowly, "humans are known as selfish traders, scavengers of the stars." Eli chuckled softly. "Maybe some are, but not all." Silence filled the room for a while. The heater hummed softly, the only sound between them. Then the woman whispered, "They will come for me soon. If they find me here, you will be in danger." Eli frowned. "Who?" She didn't answer right away, just looked down at her sleeping child, her hand gently stroking their hair. "Finally," she said in a trembling voice, The ones who wear black armor. The hunters of my kind. Eli leaned forward. Why are they after you? Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. Instead, her eyes filled with quiet fear. And she whispered, You shouldn't have helped me. Outside, somewhere far in the distance, a sharp sound echoed, metal boots striking the ground. Eli's heart began to pound. He went to the window and saw dark shadows moving between the glowing lights of the street. He turned back to her, his voice firm but calm. You're safe here. The woman shook her head, her blue mark glowing brighter now, pulsing fast like a heartbeat. No, she said softly. No one is safe when they are near me. But Eli didn't move away. He stood near the door, watching the street through the cracks in the curtain. Something deep inside him, some quiet human instinct, refused to let fear win. He didn't understand who she was or why she was being hunted. But he knew one thing. She and her child didn't deserve to suffer. And for the first time in his life, Eli felt that his small act of kindness might turn into something far greater, something that would test how much compassion a single human heart could hold. The night on Arvin Station was quiet. Too quiet outside Eli's small apartment. The sky was filled with drifting silver clouds reflecting the light of the moons. Inside, the soft hum of the old heater mixed with the slow breathing of the sleeping child. Eli sat in his chair, still half awake, his thoughts circling like a storm in his mind. He looked across the room at the alien woman, who now slept curled on the floor beside her child. Her face, though weary, looked peaceful for the first time. The strange blue mark on her arm glowed faintly even as she slept. Eli couldn't help but wonder, what kind of people hunted a mother and child across worlds? What had she done to deserve this fear? He shook his head and tried to rest, but sleep refused to come. Something felt wrong, a heaviness in the air. It was as if the shadows outside were moving, breathing, waiting. He stood up, quietly checking the window. The street below was empty, but far away. He saw a faint red glow, a hover patrol. He told himself it was nothing, just routine security. Still, the unease refused to fade. Hours later, a soft knocking broke the silence. It was faint at first, 3 slow taps, then another 3. Harder, sharper. Eli froze. His breath caught in his throat. No one ever visited him, not at this hour. He turned toward the door. The woman stirred in her sleep, her eyes snapping open instantly. She looked at him alarmed, her voice a whisper. Don't open it. The knocking came again, louder now, followed by a metallic voice from outside. This is Patrol Unit K9, open your door for inspection. Eli's heart started to pound. He looked at the woman who now held her child close, her eyes wide with panic. Please, she whispered. They will take us if you open it. Eli moved quickly. Turning off the lights, the room fell into dim blue shadows, lit only by the glow of the mark on her arm. He motioned for them to hide. Pulling open a small panel behind the heater, it led to an old storage space, narrow but deep enough for 2. The woman crawled in, clutching her child. Eli placed a thick blanket and some boxes in front to hide the opening. Just as he finished, the door shook. Someone kicked it from outside. Last warning. Open the door now. Eli took a deep breath and opened it slowly. Trying to look calm, 2 tall figures stood outside, their armor black and shining like polished stone. Their helmets reflected the faint moonlight, hiding their faces completely. One of them stepped forward, holding a scanner. We're searching for a Vareth fugitive, he said coldly. A female and a youngling. You seen them? Eli kept his voice steady. No, I've been here all night. The guard scanned the room with a sweeping blue light. It passed over the bed, the walls, the floor. When it reached the heater, the scanner flickered for a moment. Eli's heart skipped a beat, but then the light returned to normal. The guard frowned, tapping the device. Old human tech always messes with readings, he muttered. The other guard grunted. They were seen near this block. If you spot them, report it immediately. Eli nodded. Of course. They turned to leave, but one paused at the door. He leaned slightly toward Eli and said, Be careful who you help, human. Mercy can be dangerous. Then they disappeared down the hallway, the sound of their boots fading into the night. Eli shut the door slowly and locked it. He stood still for a long moment, listening to the silence. Then he moved the boxes aside and opened the panel. The woman crawled out, her hands trembling, her breathing uneven. Her child clung to her, eyes full of tears but silent. Eli knelt down, whispering, "They're gone." The woman looked at him as if she couldn't believe it. "You lied to them," she said softly. "You risked your life for us." Eli shrugged. "It's not the first time I've annoyed authority." But inside, his heart still raced. He knew that was not the end. They would be back. And next time, they might not knock. The woman sat down slowly, still holding her child. "Why?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why would you help me again?" Eli looked at her with quiet determination. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said. "No one deserves to be hunted for just trying to survive." Her eyes softened, and for a moment her fear turned into something else. Trust. She nodded slowly. "My name is Lyra," she said at last. "And this is my son, Aaron." Eli smiled faintly. "Nice to meet you." "Lyra and Aaron." The child blinked up at him sleepily. Murmuring something in their native tongue, Lyra whispered a translation. "He says, 'Thank you, human.'" Eli felt something shift inside him. He didn't know why he cared so much, or why this felt bigger than just helping strangers, but he knew one thing clearly now. His life was no longer simple. The act of kindness that began at a checkout counter had now turned into a dangerous secret. And somewhere outside in the cold shadows of Arvin Station, armored hunters were closing in again. Eli looked toward the window one last time in the distance. He saw the faint red glow of their ships moving through the misty sky. He whispered under his breath, "Whatever comes next, I'll protect them." The night deepened and the silence returned. But it was no longer the silence of peace. It was the calm before the storm, the kind that changes lives forever. The sun never truly rose on Arvin Station. Instead, the sky shifted from deep purple to a dull steel gray as the artificial day began. A cold mist hugged the metal streets and warning sirens echoed far away. Routine checks, or so it seemed, but in Eli's small apartment, the air was thick with tension. Lyra didn't sleep again after the soldiers left. She sat in the corner, her arms around Aaron, her back pressed against the wall. The blue mark on her skin pulsed brighter now, like it could sense the danger nearby. Eli tried to make food, just something warm, something simple, but his hands kept shaking. He glanced at the door every few minutes, expecting it to slam open again. "They won't stop, will they?" he asked quietly, handing her a steaming mug. Lyra shook her head. "No. Once the Varith enforcers are sent, they hunt until their mission ends." Eli sat down across from her, his voice low. "And what's the mission?" Lyra looked at her son, then back at Eli, her voice tight with pain. "They were not meant to find us. Aaron is more important." Before Eli could ask more, a sharp knock hit the door, not gentle this time. 3 strikes. Loud and hard, followed by silence. Eli stood up, heart pounding. Lyra pushed Aaron behind her and reached into her coat, pulling out a small silver device that shimmered with alien symbols. "No words," she whispered to Aaron. "Hide. No sound." Eli opened the door a crack, just enough to see who was outside. It wasn't soldiers this time, but a neighbor, a small, hunched alien named Fricks. He spoke quickly, eyes darting behind him. "They're searching every level now. Enforcers are sealing exits. They're saying there's a traitor hiding in this sector." Eli felt cold dread wash over him. "How long until they reach this block?" Fricks whispered, "Minutes." Then he looked around again, leaned closer and hissed, "You helped her, didn't you?" Eli didn't answer. Fricks gave a tight nod, then pulled out a keycard, pressing it into Eli's hand. "Maintenance tunnel," he said. "East wall behind waste unit. It's old. Not scanned. Go now." Then without another word, Fricks disappeared into the mist. Eli slammed the door shut and locked it, turning to Lyra. "You have to go. Now," he said, already pulling open floor panels to reach his emergency supplies. Lyra hesitated, her eyes filled with guilt. "I'm sorry. I brought this danger to you." Eli stopped and looked at her. "You didn't bring anything. They did." He handed her a coat, one of his old jackets, and stuffed food packets into a small bag. He bent down to Aaron's level, speaking gently. "You're going to be brave now, okay? We're going on a little adventure." The maintenance tunnel entrance was hidden behind a rusty unit near the back alley. Eli pushed open the panel and helped Lyra and Aaron climb down. The tunnel smelled of oil and damp metal, but it was dark and safe, at least for now. They moved slowly, carefully, Eli in front with a dim flashlight. Every sound felt louder down there, every drip, every clang of metal far above. Halfway through the tunnel, Lyra finally spoke again. "You should have left us," she said softly. "No one would blame you." Eli turned and gave her a tired smile. "That's not how humans are built," Lyra blinked. "But you'll lose your job. Your home, maybe your life." Eli looked down the tunnel and said, "Maybe, but I'll still be human." Suddenly, Aaron gasped, his small hand gripping his mother's sleeve. Eli turned and saw movement behind them, a flicker of light in the tunnel. He quickly switched off his flashlight and pressed them into the shadows. A soft humming filled the air. Drones. Scanning for heat signatures, Lyra clutched Aaron close, whispering a strange word that made her skin glow faintly. The mark on her arm pulsed rapidly. Eli wrapped his jacket over them, hiding the glow, his breath held tight. The drones hovered for a moment, scanning, then moved on. When the sound faded, Eli exhaled slowly. Lyra looked at him with wide eyes. "You saved us again." Eli nodded, but his voice was steady. "We're not safe yet. We need to reach the outer bay." As they continued, Eli's mind raced with questions. Who exactly was Lyra? What did the glowing mark mean? And why were the Vareth enforcers so desperate to erase her and her child from existence? He didn't know the answers yet, but he knew this. He wouldn't stop until they were free. And somewhere above, on the surface of Arvin Station, the hunters were closing in. The final sweep of the sector had begun. Orders were clear: retrieve the child or erase everything. But Eli had already made his choice. He was no longer just a cashier. He was the shield standing between a mother, her son, and the coming storm. The tunnels were cold and endless. Each step echoed against rusted walls, carrying the soft sounds of breath and worry. Eli moved carefully, flashlight in one hand, keeping his other hand close to the tool pouch on his belt. Behind him, Lyra walked silently with Aaron held close. The child's head rested against her shoulder, tired but calm. For a long time, none of them spoke. Then, finally, Lyra broke the silence. "You deserve the truth," she said quietly, her voice shaking. Eli glanced back, his boots stopping on the damp floor. "What truth?" he asked, already guessing it was something heavy. Lyra took a deep breath. "My name is not just Lyra. It's Lyra Vareth Tal, once a keeper of the High Rings." Eli blinked. "That sounds royal." Lyra nodded slowly. "I was once part of the Vareth royal court." She lowered her head, her voice turning bitter. "Until they turned against themselves." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small crystal disc. With a tap, it projected a glowing image. 3 tall alien figures in silver robes, standing in a circle. In the center was a child with blue eyes, glowing brighter than any of them. "That's Aaron," Lyra said. "He's not just my son. He's the last living heir to the Vareth bloodline." Eli's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Aaron, now fast asleep in her arms. "The enforcers, they're trying to kill a child? A prince?" Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "Not just kill. Erase. Erase the memory that he ever existed. The new leaders fear what he represents." Eli ran a hand through his hair. "And you? They want you dead too because you took him?" "I didn't just take him," she said. "I saved him." She walked forward slowly, the tunnel light casting a soft blue glow on her face. "When the palace was attacked, I was one of the last loyal to the old line. I ran," she continued, "with him in my arms, hiding on ships crossing dead zones, begging for shadows to cover us." Eli looked at her with new eyes now. She wasn't just a mother, she was a fugitive of history, carrying a child that could change a galaxy. "You could have let them win," he said softly. "You could have hidden forever." Lyra looked at him, her voice fierce. "He's innocent. He's a child. He deserves more than shadows." They continued walking, deeper into the dark, and as they moved, Eli felt something shift in his heart. He had helped her because it felt right, because no one should go hungry, but now it was something greater. Now he was protecting a flame that powerful people wanted to snuff out. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked. "I didn't trust you at first," Lyra admitted. "Your kind has helped and hurt mine both. But you gave food without asking. You gave warmth without question. You stayed." She looked into his eyes. "Now I trust you more than anyone I've ever known." Eli felt his throat tighten but said nothing. Instead, he reached out and gently tapped the glowing blue mark on her arm. "This mark, what is it really?" Lyra held it up. "It's the seal of the true line. It binds those who carry it," she explained. It holds our history, our identity, and our danger. Suddenly, Aaron stirred and looked up, his glowing blue eyes locking with Eli's. "Are you my protector now?" the boy asked in a quiet voice. Eli knelt down, meeting the boy at eye level. "Yeah," he said. "I guess I am." The boy smiled, small and sleepy. "You're kind." Eli chuckled softly. "Don't tell anyone." "I have a reputation." Lyra watched the moment silently, then said, "We need to reach the outer ports." "There's a contact waiting." Eli nodded. "Then let's not waste time." But before they could move again, a soft hum echoed behind them. Faint, like a whisper of electricity in the air. They all froze. Eli turned off the flashlight instantly, pulling them to the side. A distant blue light flickered at the far end of the tunnel. Another drone. Did they trace us? Eli whispered. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "They're not searching blindly anymore. They're tracking." Eli's voice hardened. "Then we move fast. No more breaks." They pushed forward through the tunnel, deeper than they had planned. Each step now had urgency, fear riding their heels like fire. Eli didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know how far the enforcers would go. But he knew one thing clearly. He wasn't just helping strangers anymore, he was part of a story now. One that could shake systems and burn empires, and all of it. All of it had begun because a cashier refused to let a mother return a piece of bread she couldn't afford. The tunnel began to shake. At first it was just a soft vibration under their feet. Then the walls trembled, dust falling from rusted pipes. Eli stopped and listened. It wasn't a quake. It was footsteps, heavy, armored, and getting closer. "They've entered the tunnels," Lyra whispered, her voice full of fear. Eli looked behind them. Dim blue light was flickering again, only this time brighter. "They're coming straight for us," he said. "No more hiding," Lyra replied, pulling her child close. They reached a rusted hatch at the tunnel's end. Beyond it, the lower docks, barely used. Half shut down and forgotten by most, but Eli had worked these docks once. And he knew something others didn't. One of the old cargo ships. The Wren still had fuel and minimal flight power. He had repaired it during his last job, just in case he ever needed to disappear. He never thought that day would come. "Help me lift this," Eli said, gripping the hatch handle. Lyra set Aaron down, and together they pulled. The hatch groaned, but opened just enough for them to slip through. They entered a narrow service corridor, lit by a faint red emergency light. Ahead, the airlock to the dock bay, and beyond that, hope. But the moment they stepped into the docking area, alarms blared, red lights flashed, and loud metallic boots hit the floor above. They triggered a perimeter scan. Lyra cried out. Eli ran to the side panel, typing a manual override code. The system beeped, stalled, then clicked open. They pushed through the heavy door and entered the bay. The Wren stood in the middle of the dark hangar, an old freighter with faded paint and missing panels. It wasn't beautiful, but it would fly. "I'll power the engines," Eli said. "Get inside and strap in." Lyra didn't question him. She carried Aaron up the ramp and vanished into the ship. Eli worked fast, sparks flying as he bypassed the lockout codes. The ship rumbled to life, its old engines coughing before spinning to a low hum. Suddenly, a voice boomed from above. "Stop! Step away from the ship!" 4 black armored enforcers dropped from the upper level, rifles aimed at Eli. One of them stepped forward, scanning the ship. "The fugitive child is on board. Surrender now." Eli stood still, thinking quickly. He held up his hands, pretending to surrender. "All right," he said, voice calm. "Just don't shoot." The lead enforcer nodded, signaling his squad to move in. But Eli had one trick left as they stepped forward. He yanked a small device from his belt and slammed it to the floor. A flash disruptor, stolen from a junk pile weeks ago. The entire bay lit up in blinding white light. The enforcers cried out, their visors flickering. Eli sprinted up the ramp into the ship. Sealing the door behind him, he jumped into the pilot's seat. Lyra already strapping Aaron in. "Hold on," Eli shouted. He hit the thrusters, and the Wren lifted off with a metallic groan. Shots fired from the floor below. Bouncing off the ship's hull, the bay doors opened just in time, and the freighter shot into the cold gray sky of Arvin Station. As they broke atmosphere, Lyra gripped the armrest, eyes wide in disbelief. You actually got us out." Eli laughed breathlessly, sweat on his forehead. "I didn't say it would be smooth," he said. "Just possible." He checked the controls. Navigation was weak. Fuel low, and the comms were full of warning messages. But they were in the air and for now free. Aaron leaned forward from his seat, eyes glowing bright. "Where are we going?" he asked. Eli looked over his shoulder and smiled. "Somewhere they can't follow." Lyra looked at Eli, her voice low. "There's a contact on the moon, Laura Prime. She owes me a favor. If we can reach her..." Eli nodded. "We'll get there." He glanced at the small family in the back of his ship, a mother, a child, a legacy hidden from the stars. Then he looked out at the stars ahead, wide, open, dangerous. He had no army, no weapons, and barely a plan, but he had made a choice to stand, to fight, to protect, and sometimes that's all it takes to change the future. 3 weeks passed. The news from Arvin Station never reached Eli. He didn't know how many guards were punished, how many superiors lied to cover their failure. He didn't know that the docking bay where they escaped had been sealed permanently, or that his old apartment was burned down during a silent raid. He didn't care. What mattered now was keeping the ship running. The Wren was loud and clunky, but it flew. Fuel was low. But Eli had learned to recycle everything. Heat, power, water. Lyra helped him with repairs while Aaron slept quietly in a corner wrapped in blankets. Despite the pressure, there were moments of peace every night. Lyra would sit near the window port and look at the stars. She'd hum soft lullabies from her world. And Eli, though he didn't understand the words, knew they were full of memory. He saw how deeply she missed the life she had lost. But he also saw how her eyes softened when she looked at her son. He saw how they lit up when she looked at him, too, and that scared him more than any hunter. One day, as they approached the green-blue moon called Laura Prime, Lyra stood behind him. "I didn't thank you," she said quietly. Eli looked over his shoulder. "You don't have to." "I do," she replied. "You gave up everything." "Eli," he shook his head. "I didn't give it up. I traded it." "For what?" she asked. Eli smiled. "For something worth more." They landed on a forest-covered plateau surrounded by mountains. A small structure stood nearby, stone walls, fine silence. This was not a city, not a spaceport, it was a sanctuary. An old Vareth noblewoman waited by the entrance, her back straight despite her age. She wore silver robes that shimmered softly under the moonlight. When Lyra stepped off the ship, the woman fell to her knees. "Princess Lyra," she whispered, "you have returned with the air." Lyra lifted her gently. "I return not for power, but for protection." The woman nodded. "Then he shall be hidden until he is ready." Eli watched quietly from the ramp, unsure if he should speak. But before he turned away, Lyra called to him. "Come with me," she said. "You are part of this now." Inside the sanctuary, rooms were carved from smooth stone. Vines crawled along the ceilings. Glowing with soft biolight, it was beautiful, peaceful, something Eli hadn't felt in years. That night, a fire was lit in the central courtyard. The nobles gathered, exiles, scholars, survivors, all once part of the lost Vareth court. They stood in silence as Lyra stepped forward, holding Aaron's small hand. Then she turned to Eli, motioning for him to join her. He hesitated, unsure. But Lyra nodded, her voice clear. "This man is not Vareth," she said. "He has no bloodline, no wealth, no title. But when I was starving, he fed me. When I was hunted, he protected me. When I had no hope, he gave me reason to keep going." The crowd remained still, watching, listening. She placed her hand on Eli's chest, right over his heart. "This is what royalty should look like," she said. "Not in birth, but in spirit." A noble elder stepped forward and bowed. He held a small silver pendant marked with the seal of the old Vareth crown. "For your kindness and courage," and he said, "we name you Shield of the Line." Eli looked down at the pendant, unsure if he should take it. "I'm just a cashier," he whispered. Lyra smiled. "Not anymore." As the fire cracked and stars filled the sky above, Aaron stood beside Eli, looking up at him. "Do I have to be king now?" The child asked. Eli knelt down. "Someday, maybe, but until then," he smiled. "You just be a kid." Lyra leaned closer, resting her head on Eli's shoulder. The moment was quiet, gentle, and full of meaning. They had no army, no throne, no flag, but they had something stronger. Family forged not by blood, but by choice. And across the stars, stories began to spread. Not of battles or empires, but of a human who helped an alien mother at a checkout counter. Of a man who gave bread to the hungry and ended up saving a prince. And of how one simple act of kindness changed the fate of a forgotten royal line. The galaxy remembered his name, not as a warrior, not as a king, but as the human who refused to turn away, even when the universe did.